Hi there, welcome to another video on world mythology. Today I want to talk a little bit about the North American Indians, and there's two types of creation stories that you come across in North America. Well, actually there's a lot of different types of creation stories, but there's two common motifs. One is called the emergence, uh, which is not so much a creation, it's more like a coming into being. Apparently, it works something like this: uh, that, that there's a series of worlds and they're kind of like piled on top of each other. Um, the, the sky of the first world is actually the earth of another world that's on top of that. And uh, the sky in that world is the earth of another world on top of that. And it's this series of worlds on top of each other. And what happens is that the emergent story is basically how people started, how the Native Americans started out in the first world, and they eventually wound up into like maybe a fifth world. I think it usually goes up to five. So the world that we see around us now is actually the fifth world. Now, this motif is found in various Native American myths, peoples, but the most developed and the most thorough is actually that of the Navajo. So that's the one I'm going to talk about today. I'm only going to give a quick run through because it's very long and elaborate. Basically, what happens is that in the very beginning, there was first man, first woman, and coyote. And sorry about that. Get out of here. I'm trying to do a video. Sorry about that. It's my cat. He wants video attention. So what happens is that's okay. That's just one of my books. I'll show you the two books later. And they're the two main books that I consulted for this video. Now, yes, so as I was saying, there was first man, first woman, and a third being called Coyote. You probably heard about Coyote before. And the three of them were in the first world. And apparently the first world was very tight and cramped. So they got out of it by poking a hole in the sky and climbing out of the first world. And they made it into the second world. And in the second world, they ran into two more beings, the sun and the moon. And the problem is that there was enough room for them. It was still a little tight, but the biggest problem was the sun was making advances towards first woman, and she wasn't interested. So they decided to leave second world and climb out of it and go into the third world. And the third world, things were better. There was much more room, and it was a misty place. And the light was created by these areas of mist. And there were these further people that they met that lived on the sides of the mountains. And there were four mountains. And what happens is that these people said to first man, first woman, and Coyote, okay, welcome, you can stay here. Just there's a few rules you have to follow. The waters have a monster in it. His name is Sodi. As long as you don't bother him or his children, things will be okay. But it'll be disaster for all of us if you do anything to provoke him. So Coyote hears this now. Now, if you know anything about Coyote, Coyote is a very big trickster in North American Indian mythology, and so you tell him don't do that. It'll be a problem. That's where they're going to go. They're going to look for the problem and they're going to create it. They're going to do exactly what they should not do. But in that process, new things come about, which is why sometimes tricksters are called agents of change. So Coyote goes in the water and starts looking for this water monster. Doesn't see him, but he comes across his two children, and he thinks they're beautiful. I don't know why he thought these monsters were beautiful. But anyway, so he stole them and he wrapped them up in a blanket and he took the two monster children home with him. And T-Hold Sodi realizes his children are missing, and he realizes that they've been taken, so he does what he can. He's a water monster, so he's got control of the water. So what he does is that he causes a worldwide flood, and what happens is that the flood waters are rising, and what the people there too, including first man, first woman, and the people that they met, the mountain people that they met there, they take the four mountains and they pile them on top of each other. But that's not enough to reach the sky. So what they do is that first man plants a reed on the top mountain, and the reed grows and pokes a hole in the sky, and then they're able to climb out of the third world, and they reach the fourth world. Now in the fourth world, something else goes wrong. What happens is that there's a gender crisis. What happens is that there was a fight between the men and the women. The women, each gender thought that they were the main reason why everybody was happy, and they had food, water, shelter, warmth, light, and and the other gender was saying, no, we're the main reason. So the women were saying, we contribute more to the good life of the people, and the men say, no, but we hunt, and we know the ceremonies better than you do the religious ceremonies. Without religious ceremonies, the crops won't grow, the rain won't come. So they get into this argument, and they separate, and they kind of set up a bit of a contest, who can do better without the other. So the men do a little bit better, because they know the skills of hunting and building better than the women. The women did better in other things, like I think planting, but each without the other realized that they couldn't get by without the other, so they reconciled, of course. But because of the strife, even though it was over, it had consequences. The soil started getting super soggy, and then they realized that the floodwaters from the third world was because the water monster is still looking for his two sons, and the water from the third world is bubbling up into the fourth world, and and causing the earth to get soggy. So what happens is that they managed to do the same thing that they did in the third world. They piled mountains on top of each other, and they planted another reed, and they climbed out of the reed, and they came out into the fifth world. But that wasn't enough. The floodwaters kept rising out of the hole that was created by the mountains and by the reeds, and the water monster was like, where are my children? And all the Native Americans were opening up their bags and saying, we don't have them. And then Coyote was the only one that didn't open up his bag. So Coyote was in a tough spot. He goes, okay, here's your children. And he gives the children back to the water monster. And the water monster accepts the children back. And then the water finally recedes. So that's how they found themselves in the present world, the fifth world. It's a very interesting dramatic view of the way it looked. What happens is that before the fifth world was flooded, they saw the horns of the water monster rise from the fourth world into the fifth world. It's just such a great image. And the voice, where are my children? And then the water recedes. And then death came into the world, and death had to come into the world because the living would eventually, there wouldn't be enough resources if everybody kept multiplying. And the first woman to die, what happens is that somebody went over and looked down into the, I forget who the first person to die was, but I think it was the moon, and nobody knew where she went. Somebody had the feeling to look down into the hole that was still there, where they can peek into the fourth world, and they found her there. And then they realized that, oh, the dead don't go to some terrible place. They go back to the fourth world, which is underneath us. And and then first man and first woman start instructing the Native Americans how to live a good life. But the Native Americans were kind of a little arrogant and presumptuous. They felt like, oh, we don't need advice from you two old people. And first man and first woman got angry, and they created new monsters. There was this one giant that devoured people. There was a flesh-eating antelope that they created. And there was these people who shot lightning out of their eyes to kill you. And they lived in like a crystal palace, a crystal cave. And what happens is that, but then first man and first woman felt bad because a lot of people were dying off because of these monsters they created. And then first woman is walking around one day, and she comes across this baby that was just left alone. And she takes the baby home, and this baby they called Estanatlehi, which means changing woman. And you hear all kinds of stories about changing woman. When she was found as a baby, supposedly there was a big storm before she found her. And she was in like a little cradle in blankets and tied there with rainbows and lightning bolts. So she knew she was some special figure. And the way she's called, the reason why she's called Changing Woman is because when she grew up, she had this amazing ability to very quickly become very old and very quickly become very young again. So she kept changing between these two. And she was kind of a savior of the people because she took a mate, the son, as her husband, and the two of them gave birth to these two boys, and these two boys became kind of like monster slayers. Now, you have to remember the emergent stories, they usually came involved with rituals for different reasons, whatever they needed a ritual for healing or for some reason. So what happens is that they would draw these amazing sand paintings, and they would destroy the sand paintings when the ritual was done. And so what happens is that and each part of the story has a section, and this next section is called Monster Way, which is basically the part of the story of the emergence where these two sons go out and they kill these monsters that first man and first woman created, and they managed to kill them, and then the people are saved. The most interesting version of the monster killing was, I think, how they killed the people who shot lightning out of their eyes. What happens is that one of the twins, one of the boys, he had the special protection from lightning. I mean, because he was one of the sons of Changing Woman, and his father was the sun. So elements like lightning and thunder and water and sunlight and tremendous cold and heat didn't have much effect on him, and he was able to kill him with his own lightning bolt that his father gave him. Because before they went to kill these monsters, they went to visit their father, and the father gave them special gifts, and one of the gifts was a lightning bolt. So anyway, so that's pretty much that story. There's a lot of details I left out, but it's just a run through. Otherwise, I'll be here all day. And I want to get to the second motif. It's called the Earth Diver motif that you'll find among several Native Americans. And this is another very interesting story. What happens is that there was this group of people living in the sky, and one day this young woman leaned over the edge of the sky and looked down and noticed the earth, and she saw how pretty it was. And one day she got sick, and they thought she was going to die, and a hole opened up in the sky, and she fell through it along with various animals, and she fell into the water because back then the earth had nothing but water. There was no land. And what happens is that she found herself on the back of a huge tortoise as well as other animals. And what happens is that she asked the animals if they could dive deep in the water and bring up a little bit. Somehow she knew that at the bottom of the sea there was some earth, and each different animal tried different times, and they all failed. And finally, she asked the humble frog, and the frog went deep down, and he grabbed a little dirt in his mouth, and he rose again to the surface, and he was very near death. But just before he died, he he coughed up the little bit of dirt that he had in his mouth, and what happens is that the Sky Daughter was able to, with this little bit of dirt, she worked it like people work out dough to make a pizza, and she worked it out. She was able to magnify it by making it very flat and broad, and this became the Earth, and that's how come the Earth is on the back of a tortoise. And so they call this the Earth Diver motif because of the idea of different animals taking turns jumping in the water and trying to find some dirt. Get out of here. Sorry. Get out of here. That's Eric the Viking, because he's orange. Get out of here. So anyway, that's the second motif. I don't have a full fleshed out story of that version. I just wanted to mention that little motif of somebody falling from the sky and landing in the water and becoming friends with animals and asking one of them to get soil from the bottom of the ocean. And anyway, and it's funny because some of these motifs you find in other cultures as well. For example, in the first story, the idea of these twin sons who go about being the saviors of their people by either killing a monster or several monsters or finding something special, sometimes going to the underworld and facing death and bringing something back, something special. This is a motif you find in a lot of cultures. You have this in Mexico, South America, and also the idea of a woman coming from the sky and being kind of like the progenitor of either the earth or people who are going to live on the earth. Strangely, in Finnish mythology, there's a woman who also lived up in the sky, and she jumped because she got bored with her sky living, and she landed in the sea, and the action of the water and the wind impregnated her, and she gave birth to the very first man, who was a great magician named Vainamoinen. That's a story for another time. But anyway, let me just show you these two books that I have here. But there's other books too, but I'll just show you these two for now. This is, I've showed you books from this series before, Library of the World's Myths and Legends. This one is on North American Indian Mythology, and it's by Cottie Burland, Burland. Don't worry, I'll write them down in the description. And this was actually a really beautiful book, very, very detailed and amazingly illustrated with a lot of artifacts that are found in different museums. Yeah, and this one that fell is let's see, is also another very good book. It's simply called The Mythology of North America, and it's by John Bierhorst. And this author is really very, very good. He has one on South America, the mythology of South America. Then he's got a third book, The Mythology of Mexico and Central America, which is also very good. Yeah, so anyway, that's it for today. Oh, by the way, I want to thank you for the latest comments. For those who are new to this channel, I've been battling cancer, and I broke my wrist in January. It's getting better. I'm still in physical therapy and occupational therapy. See, I got my little squeeze ball here. I got to squeeze this every day. I'm still I'm still kind of weak. My biggest issue is grabbing something and pulling it. You know, I just don't have the strength yet. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. It was a little clumsy. I'm sorry about my cats bugging you. You know, anyway, I hope to see you again soon. Bye. But anyway, the last few comments, you guys were all very supportive, thanking me for my videos and telling me that you enjoy them, and giving me good wishes to get better. Yeah, so until next time, bye.